So when you were in college, like nearing graduation, did you know you wanted to get into broadcasting, or like kind of how did that whole, how'd that come together for you?
I did, yeah. I was at going into my senior year. I interned at MSG, Madison Square Garden Network, and they just had like a management changeover. It was a changeover. It was a corrosive environment from me cutting the highlights and being the lowest PA on the totem pole to the people on air and people running the network were just really unhappy. Which that summer and that summer was 2005. A lot of my friends at Columbia and elsewhere were in finance. So all of them had signed summer internships with Goldman Sachs and Bear Stearns and UBS, and they've got 10 and 15 grand signing bonuses, and I'm making $20 a night sitting in these cubicles, having all these guys tell me, why aren't you in finance? Why aren't you in finance? Because prior to the world melting down, like, why are you at Columbia? Why aren't you in finance? And I hated numbers. I hated finance, but it made me question, all right, maybe this industry is not for me. If the guys on camera are miserable, and that's who I aspire to be, maybe this isn't for me. So I ended up meeting a guy that worked for Interpublic Group, which is a marketing CEO of a marketing company. They own a holding company. They own a bunch of marketing agencies. Long story short, he ends up plugging me in different places. I ended up having an internship or a fellowship with them. Students that came out of school and rotating through different marketing agencies. It was a diversity management training program, which I was fortunate to be part of. But at the same time, Columbia, they'd always had a radio station when I played, and it was a student-run radio station.
Yeah, I saw that.
And they told me they want to have a professional radio station. So we're going to have Jerry Recco, who's with WFAN and CBS now. He's had a great career, great guy. We have him coming as the play-by-play guy. Do you want to be the analyst? I said, are you going to pay me? They said, no. I said, okay, let's do it anyway. It seems like fun. I'm going to go to the games anyway. It seemed like a great thing. The first game, ironically, was the first game that I didn't play in. All my boys were still on the team. Is at Duke. We're playing in a tournament. I think it was the Coaches versus Cancer at the campus games. And we had like a 45-minute fill before the game started in the radio call.
Yeah.
And I did the 45 minutes, do the game. As soon as I took my headset off, I was like, nope, this is what I want to do. Like I knew at that moment, it was that much fun. The energy, obviously, in that building, the experience to be able to talk and try to break down the game that I love so much, was so close to. And obviously all my boys on the team in that 45-minute fill, we just went through the whole roster. Recco's just like, tell me about this guy. And just the strengths, weaknesses, what he's like off the court, just like random. It was like a roster rundown. But the game itself was awesome. And I think from that point on, I knew I wanted to do this. I just didn't know. It took me 5 years of working in different radio jobs, of grinding to try to get different jobs on TV. MSG Varsity, which was MSG's high school network, was the first TV network I got a break at, and just kept trying to grind through that. It took me 5 years of trying to, having broadcasting be a side hustle and a lot of times not get paid for any of it, to build a reel, to do kind of what you're doing right now. That's why when you reached out, I was happy to talk to you, because I think it's really admirable and interesting what you're trying to do as a current player, to have a podcast, to begin to build your reel while you're still in it is unique. And I think that's what I was doing for 5 years, trying to figure out how do I build my reel, and then how and when can I save enough money to eject from my marketing job that then I can try, and if I fail, not be totally destitute. So it's kind of like a long-term play. And in 2011, I quit my job, went all in broadcasting, and to sum it up, it worked out.
Yeah, no, I mean, so obviously I'm a big college basketball fan, see you on TV in the studio all the time. What was the first time you remember seeing yourself on TV like, or what was that, experience like?
That's interesting. I think the first time I saw myself, but bear in mind when I was doing radio, you didn't see anything, but the internet started to take over in terms of games being put online in probably about 2008 and 2009. And Columbia was at the forefront of a lot of stuff in terms of having the games on our radio calls overlaid on video broadcasts that allowed fans to sign up for their subscription service and watch the Lions play. And that was the first time I remember seeing they did a post-game hit of us. And it was interesting because you look at it like it's film, as it is. You break it down. What is my delivery like? Am I comfortable? And it just felt natural. It felt like it was comfortable. But that's in my element of just talking the game. Why I tell you this is because I wanted to realize, only playing at Columbia, that I probably had to do other things. Like at that time, they weren't hiring, ESPN wasn't hiring, nobody was hiring a mid-major college basketball player that wasn't a prolific player or made a name somehow in broadcasting. So in my head, I was like, I need to learn to do other things. So MLB Network, a friend of a friend was like, got me an audition. And the first time I read off a teleprompter, now that looked like aliens had taken up my body, because it was something that I wasn't used to. And the first time I remember seeing that was like, oh my God, I am starting at the base level when it comes to just simply reading off a prompter and trying to be a broadcaster. Like, I knew how to talk about basketball. I knew nothing about how to be a broadcaster. So that was eye-opening to see how hard you have to work, how much you have to learn if you want to learn that craft, as well as what I've already kind of understood. And all the mechanics that go on in TV or radio, everything behind the camera. I didn't know any of that. I just showed up and talked. So the first time I actually really looked at myself and started to analyze it, it helped me get a lot better.
That's interesting. Okay. So you're obviously always in the studio during college basketball with Jay Billis, Seth Greenberg, all those guys. I asked Jay this too. How do you kind of prepare, for that day or that week in the studio in between games, for your delivery of information?
Well, it depends. I think there's different roles. So like I mentioned Jay. Jay a lot of times is on site doing whatever our biggest games of the week are. And I do a lot of games too, but the game preparation is different from the studio preparation for me. The studio prep, like the best way to explain it is when you're in studio for a Saturday, for example. So we're usually there from the noon game till about 1 a.m. till the last game ends on E2. And then sometimes we do a 30-minute or an hour wrap-up show called CBB Live, College Basketball Live. And the studio preparation is going into that game. You've already watched so much film, but you need to have a survey course understanding of everybody. And then like a 400 level understanding of, 50 or 40 teams. Because anything can happen on Saturday. You got to really understand who are the key guys, whether it's like the Southern Conference has been really good in recent years. So we got to know East Tennessee State. You got to know Furman. You got to know the UNC Greensboro. You got to know the guys. You got to know what their history, what they're good at, as well as every team in every major conference team that's going to be playing that day, and every top 25 team. So you watch you consume a ton of film. A lot of times you use Synergy Sports as my app of choice, or to break down the film to help me parse through things faster. If I want to see how guys are operating on pick and rolls, how guys are operating transition, whatever it may be, helps me kind of focus in on some things, as well as watch games quicker, because it simply cuts out all the commercials and all the time in between plays, and it makes it a little bit quicker and easier faster to digest. So when you're in studio, you have to have a really broad understanding of everything. You have to be in terms of your mechanics on camera, have to be very concise, which I'm not being right now. Brevity is key when you're in the studio to make your point and get in and out fast, especially when you have your partner. A lot of times I work with Sean Farnham, former UCLA player, on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Really good rapport with him and work well off each other. Alfonso Ellis, former Notre Dame guy we've worked with for years too. And that rapport, you want to make sure you're a team. You want to catch, you want to dish, you want to set your guy up. You want to have a good chemistry with your crew, and that's always really important. A game preparation is way different. I usually watch the 3 to 5 previous games of whatever team I'm doing. Or if there was a bigger game earlier in the year or a rivalry game, something specific I wanted to look at, I'll watch that as well. And then you have basically back to the analogy to college, you have to have it's like a graduate level understanding of these teams. It is a deep, deep, deep dive to know everything going on. So whether it is Billis or Coach G watching the game, or if it's my mom watching the game, you have an ability to communicate to all those people that have the most expertise to the most novice fan, something you're going to give to everybody throughout that. And you can't lose any of those people along the way. So if you can't use jargon that my mom's not going to understand, you got to define that for her. But also there may be something about a player or what a coach said or what they were doing at shoot around, or okay, they're tweaking this ball screen coverage. That I knew that because I was at shoot around, and I knew that because I talked to the coaches. But maybe Jay doesn't know that. Maybe Coach G didn't know that's the approach for this game. So you're giving something to everybody. You're educating, you're entertaining, and you're elevating the broadcast. But to do that, you have to take a massive deep dive in every game you do. So you know more than anybody watching at home.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really interesting. Okay, so like yesterday, you were the host, sort of, right, on that broadcast. How do you kind of, obviously you're given that assignment ahead of time, but do you kind of like, which role do you like better? Because I've seen you on sidelines as the host and the other, the color guy. So just kind of talk about, the differences between those.
It's a good question because they are very different, and that was I think I've done a couple things for us for college basketball related, where they've wanted me to be the host/analyst type role. And that's when it's in studio and it's back to that thing where we're breaking down a game or something and you're playing back and forth, it's very natural. But in that environment, yesterday, the thing you're referencing, we did a pro day for Tyrese Maxey and Anthony Edwards, is different because my role really in that regard is to really traffic cop it and maybe drop in. And as a host, and that's a simplification of it, but a really good host makes everybody around them better, ideally. It makes everything seem really easy, whereas in that show in general, there's people out, there's producers and cameras and directors out on the site in LA. We have our producers and directors in Charlotte directing me and producing our show here. Jay is in Charlotte, Mike Schmidt's the other draft analyst is in LA. I mean, there's disparate pieces everywhere.
Yeah.
So the producer we work with, Todd Jones, was very good in his communication. My job is to get us to point A to point B and get us to get Jay and get to Mike to different stories they want to tell, things they want to hit, and at times maybe throw my thoughts in. But that's why it's a good question, because when it's college hoops related, which is also my area of expertise, but my role in that regard is to be the host. So I take that as that's the role, and I will drop in my thought here and there, but that's not my job. My job there is to make sure Jay gets in what he needs to get in, Mike gets what he needs to get in. We need to get promo material we need to get in. Todd, we get out to breaks on time. We get back in breaks. That's the role. And when it's hoops related, it's a little different. When it's more natural, it's when I host soccer shows or play-by-play for soccer, because that's not my area of expertise. I love that game. I'm passionate about soccer. I'm very interested in doing it. I love the craft of play-by-play and learning that, as well as hosting. But that's where you're totally comfortable, because you want to get the best out of your analysts, because you may have an opinion, but you're not the expert in the area. That might help inform your questions, and it should, but it's not my world. So that's different when it's college basketball. So it's a good question. It's like finding that balance of doing my role and doing it well with whatever assignment that may be, and accepting that role. It's like being on a team, accepting that role, trying to excel in that role, and make sure my teammates do the best job they can, whatever the role may be.
And earlier you talked about that chemistry, you have on screen. I'm curious. So sometimes you see 2 people on a studio update, and then the next day you see 4. How do you guys know how to work, when it, like, say it's you and Seth Greenberg one day, and then the next day it's Billis, all 4 of you guys. Does that just come with experience, all working together?
Yeah, experience is important. I mean, it is really a team, and you got to understand chemistry. You got to understand the points they want to make or the points that I want to make, and how they play off each other, or how they conflict with each other, to have a dialogue or discussion about that. And I think that the best thing you want to have is be natural with each other. And that's what I think ESPN does foster, that, particularly in the pre-COVID world, is the ability to get together, to see the folks you're going to work with, to spend time together away from the camera, so you get to know each other. When you build that friendship and that understanding, that helps you on camera as well. But just in terms of actually doing the job, you gotta be concise. You gotta know which points you want to make. You gotta work together to provide the best product. When one person wants to dominate the set, that comes through the viewer, in my opinion, and definitely comes through the people on the set, because it's like, oh, this is like a guy taking 30 jump shots in a game, and like that doesn't usually bode well for the team, most likely. There's no necessary LeBron on a studio set. There may be one guy that's stronger than the other. And in that case too, you want to pick up the person that's more new to the job, or hasn't done it before. It's a departure. It's very different to be in studio than it is to be doing a game. So folks that haven't done it before, just like I was at one point, you have to have people who help pick you up. And then once you become used to it, you have to help pick each other up. And that's kind of, the chemistry comes with time. That's where I think Sean and I have worked together now for 2 seasons. And I think we have a great chemistry working together. But I think it is a thing built over time, and people's personalities do play into that too.
Okay, yeah, 2 more questions for you. So obviously you've been working at ESPN for a while now. What are some games, college basketball games that stand out to you that you were, calling in arena?
That's a good question. I have spent the last 2 years with ESPN being primarily in studio.
Okay.
I've done probably 10 or 15 games each year. The years prior to that, I would do between 40 and 60 games, and sometimes with different networks, whether it be CBS, NBC, and ESPN at times. But that's a good question. I think personally for me, the first Ivy League tournament we had was meaningful to be able to, because that's something I'd wanted to see for years. Clearly, I wanted to see what as a player, because we weren't beating Penn and Princeton enough in the regular season to get through there, but you wanted to have a chance in a tournament. So to see those kids have an opportunity at the Palestra, which I think is the mecca of college basketball in our country, was special. And to see great games. We saw Penn and Princeton in the semifinal, came down. I mean, it felt like the Palestra, when I used to play, that place was packed every time. And you can't hear a stinking thing in there. And it's an old environment that has so much character to it. So to sit there, to be there at half court and watch that game, and also for it to be on ESPN, which is important. A lot of folks got to see how much better the Ivy League has gotten, and see a great game like that was cool. I remember I came back on campus right after the final. The semifinal between Penn and Princeton was the best game there. But Penn goes on to win, and I walk into campus, and I hadn't even met him yet. Scott Van Pelt's in the cafeteria, and he comes over and he's like, "Hey man, I just want to say hi. How about that game?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He was like, "That was nuts. Like that's what this is all about." Like he's such a great. He exemplifies what a great host should be, because he just loves the sports, and he wants to make good TV and have great content. I think he's it doesn't matter what level it is or where it's at. When he sees something great, just like most fans, they appreciate it. It was really funny for him to like take that in and be like, what an atmosphere, what an event, what a showcase for that league. And that's exactly what I think a lot of people took away from that event. So being part of it and sidelines is special for me personally. One of the first games I ever did, I was working for IMG. They own this is a long story. But one thing I will tell you, anybody you meet, so we're doing this or other stuff, use your network, my friend. You know, keep in touch with people, because the people that I used to work for as Verizon, when I was Verizon was my clients, and we were doing content deals for them. Well, the IMG, you know, IMG College owned a bunch of different properties and stuff. One of them was they were selling the Big East rights, and Verizon wanted to be a sponsor. So I did that deal, and that was the year that they expanded the Big East to every team got in the tournament. The problem was ESPN wasn't going to broadcast the first round. And they said, well, what are you going to do? We want to produce it, but we don't have anybody to do the games. I was like, ironically, I work as a broadcaster. They were, what are you talking about? I was like, well, that's what I do on the side. Then I showed some of my stuff. Like, great, you can do our games. Well, one of those games was 6 overtime Syracuse-UConn game. I was working at a sideline. I was always doing some reporting before and after the game and some hits and stuff. But there's I think it's the 4th overtime. I'm sitting right there sideline at MSG, sitting there watching it. And Johnny Flynn's shot misses, and he limps over to the sidelines. He's like, dude. I'm like, yeah, you got to go again. I was just like, I mean, to be courtside to see that game was what I'll never forget. I think I ended at 2:30 in the morning. Two of my buddies were in the last row left. I mean, it was before they left in the middle of the second half, because they it was a work day, and they missed one of the greatest games of all time. So that one I'll never forget. Also for where I was in my career, just starting out and having that experience, being like, this is ridiculous.
Awesome. All right, man. Hopefully I see you on a Winthrop call this year on ESPN too.
Maybe, man. If you guys get to the Big South final, let's just hope we have a season. But good luck, man. I really hope it works out for you guys, and hope you guys can hoop it up soon.
Really appreciate you, man. Take it easy.
Have a good one.